The content discussed in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be construed as financial or mortgage advice. Always consult with a licensed professional before making any decisions regarding mortgages or financial matters.
Welcome to the Canadian Mortgage Show. Here are mortgage professionals Alex Pang and Alex Shanks to cut through the BS and educate Canadians on all things mortgages and real estate.
Welcome to another episode of the Canadian Mortgage Show. This is episode 35. Alex Pang here along with Alex Shanks. Alex, you're beaming with delight right now.
It's pretty good. I mean, I'm not wearing my jersey right now. I don't want you to cry on the podcast or anything there, Alex, but obviously the Leafs have made it to the second round. We're going to win the Stanley Cup. I know it's going to happen this year. This is the year. Like you can't say anything different.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I have no comebacks there because my team, the Canucks, did not make the playoffs. Rick Tocchet is not coming back. The team's a mess. The whole issue is we need to make sure Quinn doesn't leave. And if he's going to leave, should we trade him now? It's like, oh my goodness, we had maybe 1 or 2 good years in the last 10 years and 55 years and no Stanley Cup. And I'm getting older now, and we all want in Vancouver 1 cup before we die. So yeah. I'm 46, turning 47. Geez, if I'm here another 35, whatever years, I'm like, that's maybe 3 more runs. I don't need a dynasty. I just need 1 championship.
Yeah, I keep telling my son today, he's like, well, why does it matter, Dad? Like, it's like they need to win. Like this has to happen. I need this to happen for me.
That's great. But, like going from happy news to, we've had some sad news to talk about. Like we all know what happened here, especially in Vancouver, the Lapu Lapu Festival in Vancouver, basically the Filipino festival. 11 people died. There was a man with mental health issues, I believe in an SUV, just plowed through the crowd, killing 11 people, injuring, I believe, maybe 20 odd something more. You see it splash all over social media. I even heard it on ABC News in the States and the BBC as well. So, I mean, you hear about these things elsewhere and you never think it
can happen in
here.
Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one of these sad moments. I do have to just, all our thoughts and prayers are out to the families and the victims of the loved ones. It's just been a somber week, especially in social media where everyone heard the story about a realtor with a young family, his wife and younger daughter. They went to the festival. The 16-year-old son stayed at home to do his homework. Those 3 of them were killed as part of that whole tragedy. And the 16-year-old son was left as a surviving orphan. There's a huge GoFundMe that went out, and the GoFundMe went up to over 500,000. I saw on X today that he put out a video that he's donating over half of it to the other victims from the tragedies. Great on him. Thank you. Yeah, just hug your family tonight.
That's it. Yeah, it was a devastating thing. We know these things happen. Like we see lots of stuff in the US, but again, as Alex said, just seeing it in our backyard and having these families have to deal with it. Obviously, we don't want that ever to happen to any of ours, but our love goes on to everyone that way.
Yeah, and even now that summer or spring, the weather's warming out, we're going to see a lot of things in our cities, like, food truck festival or other festivals, anything with large gatherings.
Oh, it's going to be in the back of people's heads.
You're going to think twice about it, right? Or even if let's say, you're cheering for the Leafs or Winnipeg Jets or whoever, if your team's in the playoffs and they have these viewing parties out in the public, do you have this in the back of your mind? What's going on here? And, all these questions about, could this have been prevented with the city officials? Should there have been barricades? Should there have been police presence? I mean, it's unfortunate that it takes tragedies like this for us to kind of reevaluate. Are we doing the right things or are we going about this the right way?
It's bad things make the good things. Hopefully stuff's going to come out of this to help prevent this to not happen ever again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, going from one bad news to another, I guess we could share about it, but hey, the election is done. Mark Carney is the prime minister moving forward in a liberal minority government.
Yeah, and I mean, I know you lost a little bit of money on that there, Alex. I know that you're gonna owe our last guest that came on the podcast. You're gonna owe him a lunch there. So I mean, it's a downright sting for you.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about it. I did vote conservative. I mean, I've actually been a lifelong liberal. I just voted conservative this time because I want to change. 10 years of the liberal government with Trudeau basically running our country down the toilet. Mass immigration, housing just shooting up to the moon, detaching from incomes, and like they're not bad people, but just bad policies, bad decisions after bad, and just doubling down on bad decisions.
Yeah, and like I made a thing of just like, hey, like, I mean, a social media post of like how, like, if they just admitted their wrongs, it would be different. Like, just say, like, hey, you know what, we messed up. Where he is just, they've always doubled down of we didn't do anything wrong, and that's the my major issue with it. I do think like the conservatives, they made a change here. Like that is like Canada as a people. The conservatives didn't win, but there was a massive shift here. Like the most amount of people voting, the most amount of seats taken over, and everything like it is a thing. I mean, is a minority government great? I mean, not ideal. Obviously, like rules are going to take harder, but at the same time, like the conservatives again are going to be able to hold the liberals accountable. It's not going to be them just getting to dictate what they want to do.
Yeah, and Pierre did rally a lot of the young people and gained a lot of support. Now, I'm sure earlier on he was deemed a jerk or an ass, but I guess more like later on this past year he's kind of softened his stance on things, and less brash, and kind of taking away the comparison of him to Trump. And because I haven't seen it, but I've only kind of parachuted in the last 6 months or so to seeing that. But yeah, like I think by the time this pod comes out, the conservative caucus has already decided whether to keep Pierre on as leader. Personally, I think he should stay because he's galvanized, a demographic, especially with young people and, getting to vote and such. But yeah, just this is the way it is. Just to summarize what happened, I mean, the biggest move is that the NDP collapsed, like
It's done for.
completely.
And I mean, yeah, just and I mean that's been happening. And I mean the Green, same thing. Like it is just showing like what are those other parties for? And then even the Bloc, didn't they lose some seats too? Like didn't they lose some seats compared to before?
Yeah, and really, honestly, you and I have talked offline about this. The Bloc should not be a federal party. They're just a Quebec
No.
party.
Yeah, exactly. They're only there for themselves, and that's again that's another issue here.
Yeah, so I mean, Liberal has a very, very close to majority at 168. I mean, are they going to still form another coalition with NDP again? And again, now that NDP Jagmeet has resigned because he lost his seat at Burnaby Central, I mean that the writing was on the wall on that one. Because I mean, if he called an election, or if he voted non-confidence back in September when Trudeau was still around, NDP would not have lost this many seats. He chose to keep his pension and hang on, and to till about February. Now, like the NDP is going to have to rebuild somehow.
And
Like
I
they
mean,
went, yeah,
in that scenario there, Alex, like I guess like I do believe I think he did it for his pension. I'm going to say that, but I can understand his take on it of like, well, we know that there was turmoil between the liberals, and obviously like him not doing it, like 100% the conservatives would be in power right now if that snap election was happened. And so, I mean, like in the sense, did he do what he thought was best for the people because what he agrees in? And that's just where it's again, there's a certain amount of people that are thinking for themselves. They're only thinking about we want to make Canada look good. And it's great to look good, but it actually means a different thing to actually be good.
yeah, exactly. I mean, Pierre lost in his own riding in Carleton, and we've talked about this. This is like crazy how there was 90 people on the ballot sheet, and it probably served to like dilute the votes. But at the end, should he have been in that riding, or should they have placed him in a more safer conservative riding in Alberta, Saskatchewan? I mean, we can argue about that,
Yeah,
but
again, it's I
yeah,
mean, it's just showing like for one, conservatives want to change, but also like some people there, like I said to you there, Alex, like I like how Pierre has been, but I also haven't liked my personal self, like how he has reacted to some things and not reacted. To me, like he had lost some confidence, and maybe that's what kind of happened there. And I mean, obviously back in the day, he was probably in that community so much, but now being actually the leader for the Conservatives, well, he's also doing other things.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you kind of have to give props to the Liberals. They were dead in the water a few months ago before Trudeau resigned. Parachute Carney in, the old economist that was from the Bank of Canada, Bank of England, former um, former advisor to Trudeau, um, and it turned around for him. And they focused on the fear, anti-Trump campaign, the no 51st state rhetoric, and that turned it around for the Liberals. And
And
at the
that's
end of
what
the
was the
day,
poll. There was a poll out there that it was just asked the people that were 55 plus, what was the reason why? And it was solely because that they were scared of what the US could do to Canada. That is solely the reason why they voted for Mark Carney, which, hey, like that's great, obviously, for you if that's really what you're worried about. But again, what are we gonna do if we just keep going further into debt and debt?
exactly. So it looked like what ended up tipping the scales was the boomers were more afraid of Trump than they are caring about domestic issues, the economy, runaway housing costs, inflation, government bureaucracy, and all that. To me, I mean, I'm obviously, both of us are in the younger demographic, in the working class. That's a little myopic, and it's a little bit, it is, I guess, a little bit selfish because you're only looking at what benefit you. Like your home equity has 3 or 4 times in the last 15 years, but what's the cost to it? The rest of the country.
It's the main thing that will come from this, and this is another poll, like the Conservatives have had to be pushed over to the left, and they've pushed more to there to obviously win more of those people. And same thing with the Liberals, they've had to been pushed over to the right. And so depending on like what happens that way, maybe we get some of the things that we do want. Obviously, we're
Yeah.
not going to get everything. And that's I do think this is going to be different. It's not going to be the same as Justin Trudeau. I do believe like myself, Mark Carney, I would much rather have him than any other person that was in the riding for the Liberals. And so it just really is he going to be held accountable? Like, are we going to see a GST cut here? Do you think that's going to come here soon, Alex? Are we going to hear like, hey, yes, I am going to cut the homes at 1.1? Or is everything that he talked about not going to happen?
Yeah, I do think that removing the GST on new homes up to 1 million for first time buyers, that's one of one of his main promises. He better. So, I mean, or else, one of those main campaign promises you better follow through on, or people are going to feel like you just pulled a wool over them.
But again, like, is anything going to happen? Like, what's going to happen? Like, it's okay. Well, 4 years go by, and then maybe your people are pissed off. But well, 4 years have gone by, and what damage has had happened, and that's that. We're going back on my story. Well, I think the government should be held accountable more for what they do say, as that the curtain of like, oh, look at all this cool stuff I'm going to give you, but hey, it's gone now.
Yeah, I guess that's the benefit of having there a minority government, so that, like, I guess if they pull NDP over, I highly doubt they're going to be able to pull the block over to form a coalition to, hold them accountable. If you don't fulfill these promises, hey, we're just going to band together, vote non-confidence, and we're back in the polls in 18 months from now. So
Just imagine the cost of that too, though. That's just it's. I mean, it's just insane that way. Thinking about that too. Like, what is that cost to us?
uh, hey, governments don't need to balance budgets. They're there just to spend money and make sure they collect as much taxes as possible. So
I
I
will
mean,
say, I do think from this, for everyone to take away from this, if you're conservative, you're upset. Hey, it is same thing. If you're liberal, you're happy. We have a path forward now. We do have some certainty. We do know what is going to be happening. It's not going to be, hey, who's going to be in power? And so I think the markets are going to react. This is for stocks. This is for mortgages. On the bond side for mortgages, like it's on the downward trend again, which just means less people are jumping into the bonds, which could mean some lower fixed rate mortgages again. Again, and I like seeing that number. I was quite worried when we were going into the 2.9s. I'm like, oh, this is not good.
yeah, there was a period where, like, we were starting to see fixed rates in the threes again. Now insured rates were in the threes, maybe some uninsured rates in the threes if you had a high mortgage balance, like, and all that stuff. We were trending in that right direction, and yeah, I'm like, when bond rates were going back up and fixed rates were going back into the fours. Like, no, it's going in the wrong direction. But we all talked about this before, that rates coming down is not a straight line down. It is a bumpy road, but it is trending downwards. And, we'll talk more about that. But, just wrapping up this whole election thing, you know what? The people have spoken. We are a democracy. So just like every good Canadian, we take winning with grace, also loss with grace as well. So we hope all the best for Carney and the Liberal government. That, because honestly, we love our country. We just want this mess that you guys started to fix. I mean, the huge fallout of this is that it's created quite the division in the country. Now, especially, there's a map on how our provinces and ridings have voted. The majority of the West has voted Conservative blue, except for the greater Vancouver area and some pockets but I would say 95% of Western Canada.
Like one thing I saw there, Alex, and you can help me again, like we are both immigrants, but like what I have heard is obviously like immigrants coming into Canada, like it's a very normal for them to be voting Liberal. Like that is the average thing of a new immigrant to come into Canada. And that's where obviously like you can see it in the hubs. It is all very liberal, where even like businesses, it's like, well, downtown Vancouver, you would almost think like, is that actually in the right way? Like, is conservatives more pro-business? Is liberal? Like, it's interesting that way.
Yeah, I saw a graph of that on social, that historically they voted Liberal because the Liberal government gives them a lot of free money. A lot of asylum seekers get all this free health care, free stay, and we'll give you a stipend of 2,000-3,000 a month, while the local is struggling and not getting any of that. So typically, immigrants, once they're able to vote, they vote Liberal. So is it legal? Yes. And is strategic? Yes. So, I mean, is it ethically and morally right? We can argue that. So by, the Liberals opening the floodgates of new immigrants, they've essentially added to their voter base. And typically, immigrants where they settle are on the major cities, the Vancouvers, the Torontos, the Montreals, and less so like, in the smaller cities like, Calgary or elsewhere. But yeah, one of the things is, there's been growing unrest in Alberta and Saskatchewan, who are largely conservative because they're oil and, I used to say that Alberta and Saskatchewan are like the Texas, Florida of Canada. Could be right, could be not. But where basically Pierre was focusing on cost of living issues, domestic issues, which resonated with young people. I mean, I'd like to say you and I are on the younger side, but older people more worried about Trump favoring the Liberals, and we already talked about that. Now, here's the thing that's really interesting to keep an eye on is Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta. Her government is tabling legislation to lower the requirement of a citizen-driven referendum, where previously you required 600,000 signatures in order to have some sort of initiated referendum, to 177,000. So you're cutting that by 75% almost. So what this does is it opens up the possibility of a separation referendum from Canada. Now, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe, he's in the same boat. He's like, you know what? I am Canada first, but I'm not going to stand in the way of this happening. So what do you think about this, Alex?
It's to me, it's a posturing thing. Like is really what I see it as. It's almost you could say it's almost a Trump maneuver. It's not going to happen. Again, Alberta's very landlocked. So like where are they going to? Obviously, they would have to have agreements. Their pipe, like it's just not going to happen. Maybe if they could get BC on board, that would be a different story. Like that 100% to me would be, hey, if BC and Alberta and even Saskatchewan said, like, I mean, that'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah, I could see if BC were to come on board, it would be done kicking and screaming, because Vancouver is mostly liberal, like the greater Vancouver. East of the Fraser River, that's where it starts to get conservative and stuff. If we were on board, it would be a reluctant on board kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not something that would ever happen. I
Yeah.
mean, you could see like the Quebec has never done it. And I mean, we can already see like the indifference in Quebec to the rest of Canada. I mean, that country kind of hates us, all of us, and it's never happened. And so it's not going to happen in Alberta.
Yeah. I can see it more being a message from Alberta saying, don't take us for granted. Don't take
Yeah.
advantage of us, where all their equalization payments amongst the provinces, all the resources are coming from Alberta and Saskatchewan, and to stop treating us like shit, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I would be saying, hey, like, hey, you want Quebec, you want money? Hey, we need a pipeline to go through you. Like, if you want this extra money, it's got to go through here. Like that, those are the type of trade exchanges I believe should be happening.
I think I'm tired of talking about the election. I hope this is it. Like, let's just be it for now, unless some breaking news that we have to talk about. Like, I'm tired of talking about it. We're not political experts. We've kind of jumped on this wave that's come about that we've had to talk about it. But
Yeah,
I
well,
want to
I
get
mean, we're
back to
all
talking about housing and the economy because
yeah.
we know more about that.
Yeah, and that's where we'll definitely. I believe. I know me and Ox be talking like, well, we're going to get into a couple episodes of like just talking about some strategies and stuff for people with mortgages. Obviously, the hardest thing is like everything right now has been very heightened, and we have to make sure people understand what's going on in the economy because that directly affects everything else someone is doing.
Yeah. So I mean, all right, now what's done is done. Mark Carney is the prime minister. Now we got to focus back on what's happening in house. Like we have a struggling economy. We are on the verge of recession. And now a few banks and economists have come out saying what their rate forecasts are the rest of this year. The banks are kind of pricing in about another half to 0.75% in rate cuts for the rest of the year. Now, Scotiabank actually went out on a limb. They're already projecting out for 2026. They are pricing in 3 more cuts next year.
Which I'm surprised because I mean, remember all the other like charts we had shown before there? Like Scotia's just been flat. They've been like the most like, no, rates aren't going down. Rates are actually going to go up. And so I mean, that's not a great. It's a sign of like, hey, like our economy is not good.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, a few numbers here. Do you want to go over these numbers, Alex? It's coming out.
Yeah, let's go into obviously. So Canada's GDP shrank by 0.2% in February, and now this is on the faces of growing risk from tariffs and weak sentiment out there. Now, this is the stuff that is going to push us into a recession. I mean, you have to have a negative GDP for a recession. I mean, it's very easy for the government and the markets to adjust numbers to say, "Oh, let's remove this time." So we're not in that standard right now. And I mean, we can go back to Christina Freeland saying that we're in a vibe session, a recession, and we're actually not in one. But again, there's also the Canadian retail sales fell by 0.4% in February. It only got boosted in December and January because it was Christmas time.
Yep.
People are willing to spend money there. There was a bit of a GST holiday, but
Yep.
that number then is always boosted. And I found the government use that as like, hey, our numbers are going up. Don't worry, everything's looking good. And it's like where you're using a time where people are willing to spend money, even if they don't have money. That's just been the norm. At that time, people will go outside of their budget. And I felt like this year in 2024, people felt like it was going to be a better 2025. So they were willing to spend some money to only get into 2025 and be like, holy shit, what type of roller coaster are we getting on now?
Yeah, this orange faced guy named Trump kind of dropped in and, hey, we can call it what it is. His presence interfered with the Canadian election, and that's what
Yeah.
ended up happening. But yeah, like the Bank of Canada a couple weeks ago, they held rates for the first time in 7 consecutive cuts until they paused. If you ask both of us, we would have disagreed because like you got to preempt this, but there's probably a 2/3 odds that they will cut on the next time they meet on June the 4th or 5th, I believe.
Yeah, June 4th, or I can't remember if it was the 6th, but either way, like
Yeah.
I felt them pausing in April there. It made sense to me. It's like, hey, we don't know what's going on with the tariffs. We also didn't know what was going on with the government. It was like, hey, let's pause. Let's see what's going to happen here. And then come June, I would put a higher number that there's going to be a rate cut then.
Yeah, I would call it like by pausing in April, you almost made the cut in June a foregone conclusion. Like
Yeah.
I would even put it up to like 75% by for the rate cut. Now we are going to expect a deep recession, like Oxford economics reports that. with weaker, this is not just Canada, but globally, especially with the tariffs going on, with the trade wars, weaker global demand, job losses, and that, they'll drag the economy into contraction into, through 2026. Now, we've always said bad news for the economy equals good news for interest rates. The drawback is hopefully you still have a job to be able to qualify for those low interest rates. So if you are in a vulnerable sector like the automotive, steel and aluminum, hell, even like dairy farmers or food and all that stuff, yeah, that's not really good news for you guys. But for others who are a little bit more insulated, yeah, you can expect lower interest rate. Now, at the same time, with lower consumer sentiment and business confidence, businesses are going to spend less money. They're not investing like we've talked about before. That also leads to job layoffs. So
yeah, and again, then we have the tariffs. Like again, some of them are paused, some of them are coming in. Is we will start, like, inflation will creep over from there. Now, the one thing that we do have is obviously the Liberals did remove the carbon tax, which, I mean, what, gas prices went down by 30 cents instantly. And so, I mean, that is going to drive inflation numbers down, which is going to give some room to the Bank of Canada and the government to say, hey, look, our inflation's is under 2% here now. But as the tariffs come in more, that number is going to go up. And that's where, like, my fear and what Alex and I have talked about before is, like, I think variable, and depending on what you can get for like a 3-year fix, like that's the number right now. Maybe you can take a variable, because the way that bonds are done, banks have to hold that rate for 120 days. Now, when actual real life, like, the pricing happens daily. So if you take a variable rate right now, yes, you might be paying a premium, but you could buy the dip when bonds are actually lower and lock into a fixed rate a lot lower. Where, yes, today you could have taken a fixed rate at 4.3, your variable say 4.5, but hey, maybe when bonds dip down below at that 2.4 again, well, you might be able to lock in at 4%. And so that's where I would not tell someone that you're going to be able to ride variable for the next 5 years. I do not think that is going to happen. I think it will be low for the next year or two, but then I could see, like, variable going up again to 4.5%, 5% that way, just depending on what happens with our economy.
yeah, those days of staying variable the whole throughout. I mean, the last 5 years kind of taught us to be a little bit gun shy with variable now, to be able to kind of monitor the market a little bit more intently for any movements. So, like, do you see a day where fixed rates in the 2.99 again? Do you think
I don't
you
think
could see that day?
I don't think so there, Alex. I think, like, to me, 3.5, I think, is going to be our low. Like, and I mean, we can even go back. I think we talked about that actually on our starting our podcast in January there. I that's, to me, I think, is going to be the low. I honestly, like, we've kind of hit a stubborn point on fixed. I think fixed maybe comes down a little bit. I think variable will maybe hit that 3.5%. Fixed rate's probably going to be higher than variable for a while here.
Yeah.
And like you said, that data, like, back in 2022, we didn't have the data that we have now. It never made sense. You had a variable 1.5%, fixed rate was 3.5%. Why would we have locked in? Now you could say, hey, today, why didn't you lock in? But back then it was like, hey, you can ride that variable to keep that lower discount. But the problem is then fixed jumped up again, fixed jumped up again. There was never a sweet spot. I think May 2023, there was a tiny sweet spot that someone could actually lock into a fixed rate mortgage and have won. But everyone else, there was never a time where now we have that data. If we see something weird going on with inflation, like, we are going to be locking in very quickly. It's not going to be, hey, let's wait and see.
To bring back history at the time, yeah, how we gave advice was we knew that 1.5% rates. Now I'm talking about, it's revisionist history, right? 1.5%, and yeah, you're right. The fix was around 2.5 or 2.99 or something like that. So it was about a 1.5% difference. And how we historically we have not seen these large interest rate jumps like we've seen. Not in my lifetime or way before our time. Maybe I don't even know if in the 80s that happened.
No, it's never, like, rates have been way higher than they were, but they have never increased at that pace. And that's where I always have to remind the older population of, my interest rate was 16%. And it's like, hey, great. but your rate never went up that fast.
Yeah. If it went up 1%, yes, it's 1%, but 1% of 16 is like less than going up by 10%. Now imagine going from like 3% to 4%. Your rate went up 33%, right?
Yeah.
From a number standpoint. So yeah, at the time the wisdom was we know rates are going to go up, but usually when they go up, they go by quarter points at a time. We are anticipating it to go up 2% maybe over the next 3 or 4 years. It'll slowly return back to the 3 to 4% it was pre-COVID. And even the way it would planned out like that, variable still would have won. Now, what destroyed that logic was even economists didn't see it. The government finally relenting and saying, oh, inflation is not transitory. Inflation at 8 or 9%, we got to do something. We got to jack rates up to kill the economy, to slow it down. It was basically the proverbial, we were all caught with our pants down. And we had no
that's,
plan.
I mean, everyone loves to talk about it now. I see it all the time of why didn't you lock in? What, like, you gave horrible advice. It's, again, we took the data at that time, and I tell every single person, it's like, okay, if you knew that was going to happen, how rich are you right now? Because if you knew that that was going to happen, you would have shorted every single stock out there and you would be a millionaire right now. And that's, no one did. No, not a single person was able to time that in the right way. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll say this: I do have a rate locked in at 1.45. I did lock in one thing at that, but that was more just what I looked at my budget and worked out. No one else knew when it was 1.5 for a variable, 3% for a fixed. It didn't make sense. We were like, hey, pay it. I had a lot of people take the variable, pay as if they were paying 3%, knowing that it was going to help them. Hey, we're going to hit 4%. Like that is going to happen, but it's going to happen over 2 years. You're going to outwin that.
Yeah. But I guess what happened, that went to 4% within like 3 months, which was like, oh, what the heck is going on? So this 1.5% that you're paying, you're up for renewal soon, right? So
November,
I guess
November.
oh,
Up.
shoot.
And I mean, again, when I recently bought my other house, I budgeted my renewal coming in at 6%. Like that's how I looked at everything. And so, I mean, again, I'm going to be winning either way. Like for me with my budgets, it's good that way. It's more now trying to restructure is I need to take some equity out of it because it's I haven't touched it because I've been like, oh God, I can't lose this.
Sounds good. Yeah, some other things going on, like, not great for the economy. We shed 33,000 jobs in March per StatsCan. Unemployment has edged up 6.7%. Now, inflation has slowed to 2.3% in March, but core inflation remains a little bit sticky. Now, food inflation, we all know food inflation is up to 3.2%. So we all know that food's expensive. My goodness, like, didn't it used to be like where a loaf of bread was like $1.50? Now it's like $4.
And why? Like, tell me where, show me their profits. And I mean, the food industry, their profits have just been soaring. And that's, again, that's the problem here. And that's where they are going to use tariffs again as a way to increase their prices. And then, yeah, like I already said there, Tiff Macklin did talk about how like removing of the carbon tax is going to lower the entire CPI basket by like 0.7% for the year, which again is going to bring that number. I probably guess here in April, like we're probably going to be under 2%, maybe 2.1 for April. Going into May, we might be under 2% for inflation.
Well, some pundits have said, how long will it be till Carney puts back the carbon tax? Because he said it in his platform where he's kind of had some language where there's some carbon pricing amongst the industry or the businesses and such. And when that happens, the businesses don't pay. It eventually gets filtered down to the consumers. So, yeah, you guys voted for him.
You can tell Alex is not sour at all.
I understand. We're in a democracy, but, we move on. Yeah, so, this report came out. This is by the Liberal government, as a matter of fact. It predicts a dystopian future in 2040 if we continue going the way we are currently going right now. Declining social mobility, reverting society back to a land baron aristocracy where only the elites own land, and social advancement is impossible. So you see a collapsed economy and like hunting for food.
Sounds
Yeah.
like universal income. It just sounds like universal income
Yeah.
is pretty much what you're telling me here.
So, there's a couple shows and movies that we've watched over the years. Have you watched Hunger Games?
Yep.
Yep, that depicts a dystopian society with the haves and have not sectors of society, and then they have this whole kind of games thing for the elite entertainment. Handmaid's Tale. My wife and I watch this. Do you guys watch this?
I never watched it. I started it with my wife, but my wife doesn't like that. Those type of shows just kind of hit too home for her. Of like, and just it was like, you know what? I don't want this in my life. I don't want that stress. And
Okay.
so it's something. It's yeah, never ended up going through it.
Yeah. So Handmaid's Tale. For those of you who don't know, great show. It does depict a dystopian future where the society, like, it's called Gilead. So think of it as Quebec or something, right? Let's say they separate, and I guess society has degraded to a point where fertility is an issue, where people couldn't have kids. Well, this Gilead, they preach that they have women that are fertile, but what they do is they kidnap women and they have them as slaves, and they have these ceremonial rapings where they're maids, and the wives cannot give birth, but they have ceremonial
Their maids are the ones
maids.
that give birth.
Yeah, the maids give birth, and they take them as their children. So that's the whole dystopian future. But you know what, like, and this is a liberal report too, so um you know this new Carney government needs to definitely change its tune from how it was the last 10 years, for sure.
Now this one's interesting, and I mean, I'm interested to hear like what your take is on this. But like the Vancouver Sun came out, is it time for Canada to relax restrictions on the foreign buyer and investment in real estate? Now, I mean, this is really just going to come down to how hungry do the municipalities get here soon with taxes. Like that's really where this is going to come down to. It's like, hey, you know what? Other people aren't buying homes. We got to do something.
Yeah, and especially too, like, on top of that, property transfer tax. That's a BC thing or a provincial thing. Alberta doesn't have it. I believe every province has some form of it. Ontario, they have, I think, is a double land transfer tax, one in the GT area and one for the
Yeah,
Ontario area.
well, if you're in Toronto, you get double. If it's just Ontario, it's just a single one.
Right, right.
Alberta has a small one. I mean, it's like $2,000 is the maximum
Yeah,
one
it's
now.
like a registration, like a mortgage title. Like, I believe I looked it up. It's like less than $1,000, like a few $100s or something like that. But yeah, I mean, this definitely ignites the talk about, like, developers are struggling. Pre-sales are dead. We've heard talks about the market collapsing and people who bought pre-sales not being able to complete. Now, this is happening more so and I've even heard some anecdotal stories where what we talked about, where buyers cannot complete because the appraisal value doesn't is much lower than the original purchase price, where people bought at the peak during COVID. Now, we know that if the developer sues the buyer for non-performance of the breach of contract, they'll win 100% of the time, but there's legal costs involved. And so I'm hearing some rumblings through the grapevine where some developers are actually negotiating with the buyers a lower price so they complete. Of course, they're doing it on the down low so that they don't set a precedent, but they are determining that it's cheaper for them, for the buyer to close on a lower purchase price than to seek litigation. And who knows if they'll be able to get the money if the buyer ends up, like, having to go bankrupt and they never see the day. Sure, you'll win. Yeah, sure, you'll win your lawsuit, but will you see your money?
Where are you getting the money from?
Exactly. So we're hearing more of that in Toronto than BC, but yeah, I could start seeing more of that coming through the pipeline.
Yeah. And I mean, this is the next thing is like there's people not wanting to buy, and it's also because people can't qualify. Like this is again, like it's great to say that, hey, Carney is going to help maybe reduce the GST on $1 million homes and everything. But let's just talk about what you need to the income you need to qualify for that. To buy something, if you buy it at $1 million, the income required for that is like $217,000. Like that's like it's just bonkers that way. And that's an average starting home in Toronto.
Yeah, in Vancouver, like, we're slightly more here. It's 240,000. So unless you are working in the high tech sector, software developer, or you're high exec making that. This is like dual income at the very least, and each person making six figures. And that's a back in the day, that's a high earning couple that should be doing well financially, but this just gets people in the door and into something like an average home in the
And I mean,
Vancouver GTA.
the mortgage costs on that, even after like rates have come down a bit, they're $6,000 a month. And I mean, if I'll tell you this, I would not be buying something that my payment was $6,000 a month unless I had multiple rental suites in it. I don't care how fancy the house is. I was watching The Incredibles with my kids the other day, and there was rain, like waterfalls coming from the roof, and I'm like, damn, that'd be pretty cool. And I mean, even if I had that money, I wouldn't be doing that. It would have to make financial sense for me, where it does blow my mind what people buy and spend that way.
Yeah, even like you're right. For $6,000, that's crazy. There needs to be a suite in the basement that I guess, geez, like now two bedroom suites like $2,000 or 2,500 to make that mortgage manageable at 3,500 or whatever. But yeah, even that is like mind blowing. But thankfully, rates have come down, so that number is coming down, and the incomes needed to qualify is slowly coming down.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so
And
I
of course,
mean,
like these ones, we talked about it last time. Like the average person that is buying these, like that are buying these, are getting massive gifts, or they're selling a house that had a lot of equity and buy it. It's like a lot of people aren't really taking out these massive mortgages. It is, I would say, I'm finding more people right now, especially in the Vancouver area, that are. And I mean, they're buying homes that 3 years ago cost about $400,000 more, and so for them, it is still cheaper than renting when they actually look at the numbers, but there's not as many people out there sitting with $1 million mortgages.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, we talked about this before. On the average age of first-time buyers in Canada, 36. It's higher in Ontario. So the average age of first-time buyers in Ontario is now 40 years old. Holy smokes! It kind of goes into what you were saying about like when your average age is 40. There's some people that get in their 35. There's some people get in when they're 45. I can see the people who get in when they're 35 have generational wealth from family, help from family, and all that stuff. And those in 45, they haven't had the benefit of that. They've had to steal, scratch, claw, find a partner who makes a lot of money and finally get in with 5% down or minimum down. So that stat is truly discouraging, to say the least.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing. Like for me, it's when we're talking about the home prices and everything. Obviously, none of us want our home prices to drop and fall off a cliff. But I mean, I got to buy my first home when I was 20 years old. I would love, like, it is so amazing getting to see people to be able to buy a home, watching like the hard work that they've done. And it's very disheartening to see someone that can't do it. And I was able to do it by myself. It's pretty much off the table for 9 times out of 10 people. You need two incomes to even be able to buy.
Yeah. Well, there's one thing before we finish up here. Both of us have been kind of pounding the pavement about this the last probably 3 to 6 months. Well, the last couple of years rates were higher. We're talking about the 5.5 to 6% range, and at the time we were advising people to take a short-term fixed, bridge the gap, kick the can down the road, get to the other side because rates are at its peak. Don't lock into 5 year because that's way too long because we know rates are going to come down and you're going to regret it in future short years. Well, that day has come where like rates have come down and we've kind of shown many times through our own social media videos and stuff like that, where there was a small window of opportunity where a lot of the big banks had their penalties at 3-month interest, made it worthwhile for people to break out of their higher fixed rate mortgage, only pay the 3-month interest to go over to a lower rate, either a lower rate fixed or the math works out better to be a variable because we're also looking at trending the variable down, anticipating it to go down even further and basing it on that analysis. Well, that window may be closing, right, Alex?
And this is what this has been warning, and I told pretty much TD, they've pretty much wiped out all their penalties that were able to do this. They also used to have what's called a replacement policy where you could break the mortgage with them, save money. they cut their post-it rates and penalties went from $6,000 to $18,000. And I mean, this again is what we've been warning people about for doing this. Like there was a short period of time, and also why do not take a 5-year fixed. I'm now getting, like, I've posted stuff on this on social media. I'm getting so many people reach out and like, Alex, can you change my mortgage? I'm at 5.5%. I'm like, okay, let me look at your term. Well, no, you took a 5-year fixed. Whoever your broker or your bank was did not do what was in your best favor. And now you're stuck in that. Like does not make sense. And I did the math on one. There was one client, they took a 5-year at 5.24, and their penalty is $26,000 now. That same rate with that same lender, if they would have taken a 3-year, was 5.44. Like we're talking, the difference in payment was $50 a month. That's the difference. And that penalty would be $11,000. It would make sense for them to break their mortgage now, which $25,000 does not make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to peel the layer off this, what happens from the mortgage standpoint when a bank, the reason why banks have posted rates is not because that's the rate they're going to give you. They use that to calculate your penalty. So this is some weird math. Not every bank has the same calculation, but essentially what Alex is saying is when banks lower their posted rates, what it means is it makes your penalties higher. So when it comes to fixed rate mortgages, it's on the contracts, it'll say you will pay the higher of the 3-month interest penalty or the interest rate differential, or IRD. So during that period where we saved a lot of people money, the IRD was a negative number. So it defaulted to the 3-month interest penalty. Now, by banks lowering the posted rates, it made the IRD more than the 3-month interest penalty. So now the IRD is now the penalty. And that's what Alex is saying. With certain banks, it doesn't make sense to move it anymore. Now, have all banks done it yet? No. But that window is closing fast.
Totally. And that's where, yeah, it's again, I mean, I can only message people so many times. I have about 45 people that I have messaged. A bunch of people have saved money. I'm actually just keeping them at their current lender. And instead of moving them, it could have saved them some money. And hey, I would get paid a commission that way, but it makes more sense for them to stay at their current lender. But out of the 45 people I've messaged, only about half of them actually message me. I've then sent another email saying, hey, you need to get on this, because if this doesn't happen, your penalty is going to be increasing. And it's so funny where people are so worried at their initial rate. They're like, I need that lower rate. I need that low rate. But when you start showing people the savings after, it's like, you just kind of get caught up in your life. And that's where you want a broker that is going to be messaging you and kind of pestering you, because their bank is not calling them and saying, hey, guess what? Your rate could be lower. We could break it if you want. That's not what a bank is going to do.
Yeah, the bank will never tell you that. In the beginning, they just talk about rates, but they don't tell you about your what the penalty would be to break out of it. And so this is going to go to roost now. So unfortunately, folks, if you've dragged your feet on this, may not be possible anymore. But if you're in the boat, like likelihood, if you're with TD, won't be able to do it. But if you're with your mortgage with the other banks, it may be a possibility still. So still reach out to Alex and I, see if we can save you some money and to break out of your fixed rate mortgage to go to the lower rate. But yeah, this has been a great episode. Good to get back. We have a new prime minister now. So Carney, you are on the clock. Fix this country. Any closing thoughts?
Alex is going to be on you every single day here.
Yeah. So folks, thanks again for tuning in. Please like, follow, and subscribe. If you like this episode, please share it with another. We'd like to grow our following so we can continue to provide great content, continue this conversation, and help you navigate this country living in Canada in the economy. With that, on behalf of Alex Shanks, I'm Alex Pang. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you next time.
See you later.
Now, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like and subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, make sure to follow us. Please give us a 5-star rating. You can even send us an email, because we want to know what you guys want to hear about. That's what we're here for. Reach out anytime.